Alright, so in a recent video, I actually said that I want to start bringing a new type of video to the channel, and it's going to be a little bit more in-depth beat breakdowns. Now this beat that I have here, I wanted to go for a song kind of like Robbery from Juice WRLD, where it has like those really melodic keys, but still has really hard drums. But the way that I ended up making this melody, it kind of made it a little bit more like somber and a little bit more like sad and emotional. So let's get started. This was the very first melody that I started putting in. And that melody is basically just meant for ambiance to really complement the next melody that we have right here. I started off with just these chords. And we were sitting at a pretty comfortable 90 BPM. I just feel like for me personally, I have a much better time making more melodic stuff when it's at a lower BPM. But it felt a little bit too dull, so I wanted to add some high end in there, so I added a top line to the melody. Now that top line melody is taking up a lot of space, so I'm actually not going to add anything else, and that's all that I'm going to have in this track. Now whenever you have really crazy melodies like that, you really want to try and simplify your drums. Here's a pretty simple kick pattern. Now trying to blend pop and trap together can be kind of tough. You gotta make sure you get the right sound selection. So I tried to find the most clean sounding snare that I can get, and put a lot of reverb on it as well. Now 90 BPM is actually pretty slow for a trap song. Usually I try to stick between like 130 and 160 as far as melodic trap. But here at 90 BPM I still wanted there to be a lot of energy, so I actually went hi-hats to every single step. Now here's another point to why sound selection is so important when trying to blend these two genres. I still wanted the 808 to be very present in the mix, but not too distorted. I wanted to keep it a little bit more bouncy as well, and this is the one that I came up with. And then I just put them all down to the root note of my chords. Now I feel like the best way to really mix pop and trap is going to have really melodic sounding pop chords, and then have really simple but hard hitting trap drums. Here's what the drums sound like all together. And as far as the loop goes, that's pretty much it. Alright, now we're gonna go over how I made this loop into a full-on track. Now, listening to the loop, I kind of felt like I needed one more thing. Once I started making the verse, I didn't really know how to make the verse sound different from the hook. And as it turns out, I actually needed to dumb things down a little bit. Basically, the only thing I did from verse to hook is took out the top line melody and kept everything else in. And you might be wondering about these grayed out spots over here, but we'll go over that in a little bit. I cut up the hi-hats and the 808s to give it a little bit more bounce, as well as took out the kicks completely in the final 8 bars of the verse. I feel like having your 808s going without your kick can actually bring a whole different like emotion and feel, so that's why I kept it like that. So once the final 8 bars of the verse is done, we bring the kick back in for the hook, and it just adds a whole lot of energy. And in certain parts of the track, I actually cut up parts with the top line melody and put them into the verse just to give it a better transition. Now the verse felt kind of stagnant, and if I'm being honest, a little bit boring. So one thing you can do is add some texture. And the first one that I brought in was some bird noises. And this next sound kind of sounded like a train. And finally some 8-bit wind noises. I did also bring in a perk loop. Now when you're laying out your ambiance and textures, it's really important to try and emphasize what's already being done in the track. Now here, all of the ambiance, the tones, and the textures really help create a really good intro. It really feels like you're telling a story. And then over here, right after the hook, I actually brought in the bird noise again to really signify there's a change going on and we're progressing the story. And then for the first part of the verse, I brought in that perk. And then for the next 4 bars, I brought in the train noises and the 8-bit wind noise. Now the next way to make your track less boring is going to be adding variety in your verses. Set a little change-ups that can invoke a different type of emotion. So I know it's not very complex, but all I did was change where the 8-bit wind noise was from here to here, and the perk loop from here to here, and then made it continue for the next part of the verse. Our outro is coming up pretty quickly, so I needed to signify there's going to be some sort of change-up and that we're going to be dying down the track, so I actually cut out the last couple of snares right here. And yeah, I did have a little bit of automation for the volume to really help everything die down. Now time for mixing. All I did for the keys was add on a little bit of RC20, messed with the wobble parameter, distorted it with the tube air preset, made it a little bit more digital while really turning it down in the mix, added a little bit more reverb in the space, and turned up the wear a little bit. I also added a small EQ to get rid of some of the low end because it was clashing with my 808 a little bit. And for the reverb on my snare, I used Fruity Convolver and went into the EQ and took out some of the high end. And finally on the master bus, I added some more RC20 just for the noise, as well as Ozone 8 elements where it actually lowered my bass and boosted my high end. Alright, and after all that, here's how the first part of the track sounds. Thank you guys very much for watching, I really do appreciate it. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.